Welcome to the Intentional Father Podcast, where us fathers parent our children, not by accident, but with intent. I'm your host, Aaron Stroman.
Season 2, Episode 4, The Intentional Father. I have possibly the greatest father in Gardner, Kansas as our guest today.
I can't believe you said that with a straight face.
I'm being serious. I'm a serious guy. Ladies and gentlemen, probably mostly gentlemen though, but we have some female subscribers. Yeah.
Are they listening and then going to their husbands and being like, well, Aaron says...
Some of them are single moms, so I think they're trying to supplement.
Well, there you go.
But maybe that too.
Whatever's helpful.
Yeah. When it comes to fatherhood, I'm an expert with other kids, but my own, not so much.
I'm also an expert on the internet.
Yeah. Anyway, Lucas Motley, ladies and gentlemen, friend, also a pastor.
Friend of the podcast.
Avid
listener.
And he has his podcast 167?
Yeah, the 167.
Tell us about 167 real quick.
The 167 kind of stands for there's 168 hours in your week, and most Christians only spend 1 hour in church. And so what do you do with the other 167? So you can check us out on Spotify, iTunes, and wherever you get podcasts.
Apple? Are you on Apple?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's a good one.
We're distributed worldwide. Sometimes they call me Mr. Worldwide.
Wow. World Wide Web?
Yes. The webs.
Have you heard someone say that when you say www, it takes 3 times as many syllables as World Wide Web?
No.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
I like to hit them with the HTTP instead of the World Wide Web.
: //
Let's not get crazy.
Okay. Today we're going to be talking about fatherhood, of course, but specifically some dynamics that come along with the father who adopts children. Lucas has adopted 2 children, so you're going to tell us about some similarities and uniquenesses of being.
Yeah.
Is there a term for adoptive parent?
Usually people lump it into a category of adopted fostering.
Adoptive
Foster
fostering.
adoptive.
Okay.
Especially when you adopt your kids from the foster system, as we did. So there's a couple different, you can adopt your children by, seeking out a mother who's pregnant and then kind of being with her through that process, or you can adopt through the foster care system, or usually foreign adoption. Those are usually the big 3.
So you went through the foster system.
We did. So my wife, Chris, and I, we went through kind of a period of infertility where we were trying to have kids. And my parents had fostered. And so we had kind of intended on doing that eventually. But we thought, what we'll do is we'll have our own kids. That way we've kind of established culture, and then we'll foster younger kids. And then our older kids will help us with that and kind of maintain the culture. And that just wasn't our story. We went through 2 miscarriages right away. And so we just said, well, why would we wait on this? We want to bring children into our home. And so we got licensed to foster. And we thought our house was going to be a revolving door of children. Like usually foster care placements, they're not supposed to be more than like 13 months. But we got our current daughters, we got as our very first foster care placement.
Oh.
Yeah. And
I didn't know that.
We fostered them for 3 years, which is not supposed to happen in Missouri. And then we ended up adopting them after the 3rd year.
And how long ago was that?
Now you're going to ask me that. So Evie was born, so that was in 2015.
2015, and it's 2023.
2023, so 8 years.
Okay. 8 years.
Yeah.
All right, talk to us about it.
Oh, actually, no, I'm sorry. It was 2027 because Marilyn was born. We got them when we were pregnant with Evie. We seriously got the foster placement and then immediately found out we were pregnant. So we had them for 8 years, but we adopted them 5 years ago.
Okay.
So it's fostering and adopting through fostering is a little bit of a unique experience, but I imagine I've never been divorced, so this is kind of what I understand from the situations. It's a lot like being involved in a divorce like that, like a custody battle. But the weird thing is that they're not your biological children.
Yeah.
So I imagine it must be like what someone goes through as kind of a step parent in that process because you're kind of trying to parent these kids. They're not really your kids. You don't have a lot of control over them in the foster care system. Like, you can't even cut their hair. Like, people don't know this, but like, you cannot get your kids a haircut unless their biological parents approve.
Wow.
So like, it's that kind of lack of control. So I imagine that would be something like that. Like, if you were, you know, a stepmom, they weren't your biological kids, and you went and got them summer haircuts, their bio mom's going to freak out, and then it's going to end up in court. Mm-hmm. So it's very much like that. So I wrote down one of the unique challenges of foster and adoptive is dealing with the extra people that come along with the children. And so our two daughters, they have 3 biological brothers, one that's fully biological and 2 that are half brothers.
Okay.
And so they are around somewhere, but when you adopt through the foster care system, they literally go back and change their records. And so according to their birth certificates, they were born to Carissa.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that either.
So legally those documents are sealed. And so what's weird about it is, so we kind of kept in touch with their brothers in the foster care system. Once we adopted them, they changed their records. So when I would call the foster care system to try and locate their brothers, I'm just some random dude.
Wow.
That adopted 2 girls, and but according to records, I have 2 daughters. They're not biologically related to any of these brothers, because they changed it all in the system.
Okay.
So it makes it hard to keep track of them. But they had a mom and a bio mom and bio dad. Dad was in court for drugs, is kind of how their case came to us. And mom, unfortunately, had 3 strokes in 8 days and passed about 3 months after we adopted them.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. So our girls really been through it. But yeah, so like we try and stay in touch with their brothers currently. We haven't seen their father since they went into foster care, and they haven't seen him probably in 6 years. So, but like I said, when you foster, especially, they come with a whole team of people. So they have their own lawyer, they have their own counselors, they have their own doctor's appointments, and like, you have to take them to all of that. And so there's just all these extra people in their life. And so you have to deal, like, we are sort of in touch with their biological grandmother, but not really. And none of these people are people I would necessarily say that I would probably associate with or be friends with if not for the relationship with my girls. Like, they're really hard people to get along with. And so it's pretty tough, but like, they just come with all those extra people, and you get to make that decision of like, oh, should I just like cut them off from their biological family? 'Cause that's probably better for them, or will that be healthy for them? So
those are tough decisions to make.
Yeah. And like I said, I assume that in other families, not just adoptive families, but, you know, families that are divorced, remarried, you know, like mixed families, like, I imagine there are some of those same dynamics. But yeah, you have to take them to court. You have to show up and let other people make decisions about them that you don't have total control over. It sucks.
Okay.
But so that was one of the unique challenges, is that there's all the extra people that you deal with. And the decision that we made in that is that we try to keep them as connected as we can in the safest way possible. So like, I will go on visits with them. We'll do it in public places, those kind of things. But so it's been rough. Their brothers are in and out of juvie, and so it's definitely hard. But another thing is dealing with the trauma, but it's not your trauma, and you may or may not even have the history behind it. So like, I don't know about you, like, I have little girls right now, so we have 2 of our own biological daughters, and they're 8 and 6. So we got our older 2 girls when they were 5 and 6. And like, just think about how much personality that your kids had already formed by the age of 5.
Yeah.
Because it's like going into kindergarten.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Like, your kids, like, what were they like when they were that age? Like, were they just moldable, or were they like, you could kind of tell who they were?
Yeah. I mean, there's formative years before then that don't happen after, 3 or 4 even.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's like just that early counting, reading, writing, you know, music. all of those things. So you're getting a kid that's, essentially been abused, put through trauma, can't read, can't write, doesn't barely know, going into first grade doesn't know their ABCs. And so our girls have come a super long way, and they're really intelligent, really smart. But we got them, they were going into first grade and didn't know their ABCs. They couldn't read, couldn't do basic math. So like that was a unique thing. And even to this day, they have behaviors, and you can see those trauma scars. And it's kind of okay in the beginning because you're like, hey, I didn't do that. Like, wouldn't that be great if you could look at your kids and be like, oh yeah, my kids are screwed up, but not by me. So like at the beginning you can do that, but then after you adopt them, it's like, nope, I did that. Totally did that. So, but that's, I think, one of the things that's similar as well. But like I had a friend that he was a really good thing in my life because he was able to sit there and say, like, I would go home and be like, my girls are crazy. They just did this. And he'd be like, no, every kid does that. I'm like, oh, really? Because like, we are first time parents to these girls that we adopted. Like, we didn't have our own kids to go to kind of perfect our parenting. And so like when they're acting crazy, I'm like, this must be the trauma. And it's like, nope, those are just kids. All kids are idiots.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, you don't have a place to stand on there, and just that missed out on that early formation, or you're battling with other parents. So again, I think it's similar to divorced, remarried, those kind of custody battles where we would take them on visits and their mom would be telling them like, those people don't like you and they're just doing it for the money. And and so you deal with this kind of somebody who's parenting against you. And so it's just, those are some of the unique challenges of adoption. And like once you once you adopt them, the parental rights of the other parents are terminated. And so your kids are left with this idealized version of their parents. My mom and dad loved me, and you get to pick of, do I look at them and go, your mom and dad, if they loved you, they would have parented you better? Or do you just go, well, your mom and dad did the best they can, and then they go, my mom loved me, and you guys are mean. So it's a weird place to be.
Well, I think a big difference though, if I become a stepdad, even my role with those other children is not to be their dad.
Right.
The role's something like favorite uncle, or something like that. Adult figure with adult authority, but
youth
but
daddy.
not their dad. Yeah, youth dad. Whereas you still have to be the father. So even though there's these other adults, the expectation and responsibility is to parent them. That's
and even in the beginning,
difficult.
It's like we tell them, my girls, my older two girls are mixed race, and so when I show up at school functions, everybody they go, "That's your dad," and then they go, "Yeah," and then people go, "Oh, his wife must be black," and then my wife shows up who's white, and then they go, "Wait a minute," and it takes them a second, and then so that's very confusing for young kids, and so we told them because at first they would call us Lucas and Carissa. And then, but when we were at school, I was like, whatever you want to call me so that you're not embarrassed, like in front of your friends, that you don't have to. And so I would show up to pick them up at school and they'd be like, hey dad. And so they'd be like, that's your dad? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. Because they don't want to explain that to friends. Like, well, it's not my biological dad. And and so it's weird because you go through those phases of, I'm just your favorite uncle, to they're starting to confide in you and call you dad or daddy, and then it's like, but they feel really conflicted about that with their other parents, and then if their parents show up, now all of a sudden you're Lucas again. So it's a lot for kids to go through.
Yeah. Okay, there's two.
Oh no, those are three.
Oh, was that what's the third?
Extra people dealing with the trauma and battling other parenting.
Okay, gotcha.
So those are kind of things that I think are unique, but could be similar to other people's journeys. Well, thanks for having me on the podcast.
Thank you for joining us. I'm gonna have you back if you'll be a guest. later. This was good.
Sure. Absolutely. I'd love to come back.
For you guys, we just had some more conversation offline of some great topics. So we're
going to come back. But you can also check out Aaron. He was on an episode of the 167, so you can come over and check Aaron out on that.
Oh, I'll put that show in the notes.
Link in the bio.
Link it. All right. Hey, thanks for joining in. We'll talk to you next time. God bless.